Thank you for joining Jennifer Schaus and Associates in our 2019 Webinar Wednesday series. We are coming to you live from downtown Washington, D.C. Our webinars are every Wednesday and this week's Tuesday, and you can find the upcoming schedule on our website. Past webinars and all recordings are also on our website and on the YouTube channel, along with over 160 other recordings on federal contracting topics. All are complimentary. If you have questions for our speaker today, you can email her directly with the contact information you'll see on the last slide. All right, that's just a little bit about us. We are a Washington, D.C.-based firm and provide services for federal contractors. This ranges from market analysis support to proposal writing and also post-award compliance. More information is on our website, so please visit us there. We do offer advertising in our newsletter, so you can reach out to this email if you'd like more information on that. All right, our speaker today is Shirley Collier, and she's going to be covering build value now, cash out later. Thank you for joining us today, Shirley, and I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mallory, and welcome everyone. So you have an idea of how to use me as a resource and understand the perspective that I bring to the table today. I'm a serial technology entrepreneur, having started, grown, and sold 4 businesses. I now do what I love, and that is to help others to think, plan, collaborate, and build shareholder value in the federal marketplace. And I do that by developing and executing customized data-driven business development playbooks, building efficient information systems, and creating high-performing BD teams. Next slide. Some people start businesses for a variety of reasons. They have an excellent idea for how to solve a problem, they want to be their own boss, or they like the authority and responsibility associated with building a company. But invariably, founders also think about and wrestle with how to exit. Will this be a lifestyle business that allows me to make a good living, or do I wish to create a business that others might be interested in acquiring? I understand the soul searching that happens at some time during the life cycle of the company. So this is what we're exploring today. Next slide. What is the state of the M&A market? How do you create value? How do set-asides affect market value? And what can owners do now to cash out later? Next slide. First, let's discuss the current state of the M&A market for government contractor companies. The market changes, as you know, but right now there is a strong market with strategic and financial buyers seeking to put capital to work. Despite that frenzy, however, buyers are more disciplined today in terms of the acquisition profiles they are seeking than pre-sequestration about a year ago. Grade A companies are trading at a real premium, and because there is a perception that there are not very many left, these companies are benefiting from a scarcity premium. Next slide. Let me explain what I mean by grade A companies. All buyers evaluate acquisition opportunities on a sliding scale based upon their strategic objectives and the specific attributes of the various acquisition targets. As a result, the answer may not be the same for all buyers. But generally speaking, grade A companies are firms that, number one, have scale and move the needle from a size perspective for a buyer. Number two, have differentiators in the marketplace that create a sustainable competitive advantage. And number three, have a clear and supportable forecast of future growth and the infrastructure to support that growth. Buyers today pay premium prices for assets that come to market with these traits. So let's explore these attributes. Next slide. The first is scale, which means that the company being acquired adds to the size and capabilities of the buyer and has a multiplier effect. In my experience, buyers generally have a higher level of interest in acquisitions that are transformative to their existing business in terms of level of earnings, capabilities, or customers. For example, a strategic buyer with $25 million in EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, is not likely to be interested in a business with $1 million in EBITDA, as the combined entity isn't substantially different than the existing business. However, if they can find an acquisition with $10 million in EBITDA, that materially changes the profile of the buying entity. The exceptions to that rule are generally acquisitions that offer a buyer a different set of customers and/or capabilities where the buyer believes that there are revenue synergies to be realized post-transaction. For example, a buyer may be interested in a $1 million EBITDA business if it gets them access to a new customer set where they believe they can cross-sell existing capabilities and realize additional value from the acquisition. Next slide. The second attribute I mentioned was sustainable competitive advantage. An example of that would be if you have long-term contracts with substantial remaining periods of performance. This would be considered a competitive advantage, especially if potential buyers were not successful in bidding that contract. A second example of a competitive advantage is the uniqueness of the collective technical skill sets and qualifications of your employees. The best example of this I can see is in the intelligence community. Highly skilled engineers with clearances are hard to find, hire, and retain. Companies that have an employee base with those unique characteristics have a substantial competitive advantage as a result of the barriers to entry for winning work in the intelligence community. And finally, proprietary intangible assets such as software, hardware, and know-how that provide value and differentiate the offerings of the company in the eyes of the customer can also create long-term advantages for a buyer. If you develop a proprietary software that allows you to deliver a more cost-effective solution for the customer, and the customer realizes this, you have created a barrier to entry for another contractor to compete with you for that work. And the third attribute was a forecast of future growth and the infrastructure to support that growth. My experience is that many smaller businesses are not that sophisticated in forecasting, and especially in government contracting, have minimal infrastructure so they can keep their costs down. However, companies that want to be acquired should invest in these processes and systems to be attractive to buyers. Buyers are constantly evaluating the risk associated with future earning streams that they're acquiring, of course. The more sellers can do to alleviate the perception of risk associated with their future forecasts, the better off they will be. Therefore, contract wins, backlog, detailed pipeline reports, and performance against prior forecasts all help mitigate risk against future projections. A developed infrastructure in terms of people, meaning management team and key project managers, for example, and processes such as business development, capture, proposal preparation, win rates, financial reporting, operational metrics, etc., all can help support the story around how the company is going to achieve that forecasted growth in the future. Next slide. So let's talk about the specific industries. One more slide, Mallory. Let's talk about the specific industries or disciplines. In today's market, we have seen the Department of Defense side of government space enjoy higher levels of funding than others. And there are specific capabilities that are highly valued by the buyers, such as cyber, artificial intelligence, intel, healthcare, data analytics, and cloud computing, to name a few. Having said that, however, there are grade A companies across all sectors of the federal marketplace. Next slide. There's another value driver, and that is patents and intellectual property. Companies that can offer unique value-added solutions based on protected intellectual property are able to win more work, command higher rates, and earn better margins than undifferentiated competitors. Protecting that IP will be key to receiving premium valuations from a buyer, as it creates a long-term competitive advantage for the company. And software, although not patentable, can be copyrighted and have significant market value. Next slide. Okay, we've been talking about what drives value in the federal contracting market. And as I alluded to earlier, small businesses that have long-term relationships and strong past performance in agencies that others are having trouble penetrating is also a value proposition. There are just certain agencies that are notoriously difficult for companies to gain access to. We have seen this story time and again with various agencies in the intelligence community, Department of Defense, and with CMS. Buyers have often spent significant time, effort, and money in an attempt to break into an agency by hiring BD professionals and partnering with other contractors, but not finding success. Those buyers often turn to M&A as a way to gain access and knowledge about an agency that they haven't been able to crack organically. Next slide. Now let's discuss the market value of certain contract types. How does set-aside revenue impact the market value of a company? Well, first of all, it limits the buyer pool. If all you have are small business set-aside contracts, only other small businesses will be able to perform that work. And many small businesses do not have access to the capital necessary to acquire other businesses. Consequently, these small businesses have lower valuations, and there may not even be any viable buyers. Subcontract work on a full and open contract has more market value than prime set-aside contracts. And finally, to create value for the buyer, there needs to be a viable transition strategy to ensure that the buyer can retain the contract. Next slide. But there is a way for small businesses with set-aside work to create real market value. Set-aside contracts are stepping stones in the overall growth of a company. Small business set-aside contracts can be very valuable in creating earnings to be reinvested in the business and providing past performance qualifications that can be leveraged in future proposals. Those who are successful in positioning for exit are those that have demonstrated an ability to leverage past performance on a set-aside vehicle to win full and open contracts. They also have developed a clear transition plan for the remaining set-aside work, either by identifying a new full and open vehicle under which they could continue to deliver to the customer, or finding new set-aside partners that would allow them to maintain a subcontract position for a portion of the work. So it flips. The prime becomes the sub, and the sub becomes the prime. Another alternative is to form a joint venture with a smaller company with complementary skills, and under the mentor-protege program, the larger company performs up to 60% of the set-aside work. Whatever the arrangement is, the buyer is going to view it through the lens of what happens to this arrangement after they buy the company. Next slide. So, what should shareholders do to prepare a company for sale? Number one, get your financial house in order, which means externally prepared financial statements, clean up the balance sheet, develop reporting tools to track contract waterfalls, pipeline reports, income statements, projections, and so forth. Number two, get your legal house in order. Employment agreements, clean up any litigation or contract disputes, and lock down leases. Number three, develop and or supplement the management team. You want to make yourself unnecessary. And fourth, win key contracts. They are most valuable right after a win. I advise companies to start thinking about and planning for exit at least 3 years before their self-imposed deadline. And I touch on many of these topics. Why would someone want to buy your company? What can you do now to increase your future market value? A business development discipline that focuses on profitable long-term contracts in hard-to-reach agencies, making yourself indispensable to your client, and having a robust pipeline that has significant P wins, meaning 40% probability of winning or higher, are essential steps. I also encourage founders to bottle what they know and feed it to others, and to empower an executive team. That helps the buyer, but it also helps the seller. When I sold my last business, I agreed to a 3-month transition period, which was ample. I was ready to move on, and the buyer wanted to start doing things their way. Next slide. Business owners put in 60-hour work weeks for many years, hoping to one day cash out. I hope that I've given you some food for thought as you contemplate how you can create market value now and cash out later. For more complimentary information on how to instill enduring business development management principles into your business, visit our website at scale2market.com and subscribe to my Growth Masters Federal podcast channel. Or feel free to reach out to me at the contact information on the next slide. This is Shirley Collier, President of Scale to Market, signing off for now.
Thank you, Shirley, for joining us today and sharing your knowledge and insight. Like she mentioned, if you have any questions, please feel free to email her or call her at the phone number and email shown on the screen. And this concludes the webinar. Thank you.